Elon Musk is running 7 companies. He's growing them insanely fast and doing things that people never thought possible. And we're just sitting here standing still in our business. But what if there was a process, one that I stole from how he does things, that lets me get better every single year? In fact, if you do this, you can get your business 37 times better in just 1 year. Here's how it works. Let's talk about how you and your company can get 37 times better every single year. So this is a process. And when you see this process, you're never going to think about things the same way because it's so simple. This is all about the power of compounding. And you might have heard about it, but the math is really startling. If you got 1%, just one tiny percent better every single day, your business, yourself, your life would be 37.78 times better in 1 year from a tiny little increase. So the question that we have to ask is, what are those tiny little increases? Because if we're not doing anything, if we're just like sitting on our ass, what could be happening? Well, what if we get 1% worse every single day? In that case, we're going to be at a 0.03. Now, the truth of the matter is some days we're fine and some days we're worse and some days we're better. And so we're kind of zigzagging along, and there might be trends up and trends down, but we're not being intentional about how do we actually get better every single day. And I'm going to introduce you to a process that is going to change how you view this and give you much more control over every single day's improvement. And when you start implementing this, especially in the business context, and you're running multiple projects, you might have some big projects, but you got a bunch of little projects. When you implement this at multiple levels in the organization, and you're running one of these every week, every day, you're going to see the results compound. So this is a process that's used by the military, it's used by top CEOs, and they use it to get better every single time. So the process is pretty simple, but most people don't stick with it, and that's why they don't get the results. It is 3 steps. First, for everything that you're doing, you're going to do a pre-action review. And then while it's working, you're going to have a during action process. And then afterwards, you'll have an after action review and review what happened. And you're going to ask yourself some very specific questions each time. And by doing this, you're going to understand, well, I attempted to do this, and here was my hypothesis for doing it. Sorry for the science talk, but it's what matters. Here's my hypothesis of what I was doing. Here's what I did during that process to make sure it lines up with the original intent of what I'm doing. And at the end, you're going to say, what worked, what didn't work, what could I do better? And asking these questions will let you get better and better and better. And you're going to stay on track because you set the stage at the beginning instead of just running off and doing something. So let's look at the details. But before we do, we're going to look at some of it in the context of somebody who does pretty much more than anyone that I know. So Elon Musk runs 6, 7 plus, who knows how many companies right now, and is doing things and building things at a furious pace. And he is insanely good at quality control and making products on schedules which nobody thought possible. So I'm going to actually use him as an example and some of the processes that he uses with these after-action reviews and the pre-action reviews to actually show you how this might apply in a business that is way more complicated than anything you or I are doing. So if it works with that business, when we simplify it, it actually can work with any business. So first, let's start with the first step, the pre-action review. Before you're going to do anything, before you're going to take any kind of initiative, you do a pre-action review. And this can even be something really small, something that takes just a day to do. A pre-action review sets the table. So how do we do this? Before we're starting something, we're going to be intentional because we want that gain. And even if it's just a 1% edge, those compoundings, the compoundings of 1% gets you that 37x, we want that small edge. So we do the pre-action review. And the thing, it sounds obvious. Again, it sounds obvious, but let me ask you, are you regularly doing this? And if you're not, well, maybe obvious is what we need to deal with here. Sometimes we need to just be reminded of things we know, and this is a thing that we know will make us better. So we set clear expectations. We set clear objectives. And the components of this, the questions that we're going to ask before we start something are, what are the outcomes that we're looking to achieve? What are the obstacles? What's in our way? What resources are we using and have at our disposal? What are success metrics? And then what are the ongoing metrics? Now, why each one of these questions? Now, obviously, we want to know what the outcome is. Instead of just doing a thing, we want to know what is the actual outcome that we're looking for and document it. Not just have it in our head. You need to document it. Everyone else who's working with you, whether it's your team, whether it is partners, vendors, whoever, needs to have a shared vision of what you're trying to achieve. Because if you don't, what they have in their head might not be what you have in your head, and you're not going to get better that way. Second of all, obstacles. Think about, anticipate what are the obstacles that you might have. By doing this, you're going to get smarter at realizing obstacles in advance, because you're going to see the first time you did this, oh, I forgot, or I didn't realize that X could be a problem. And if that was a problem, then you can get better next time and thinking, what's going to get in my way next time? You're going to get better. You're going to be able to anticipate it. You're going to have a better roadmap to the outcome the next time you do something. Next, resources. What resources are you bringing to bear on this project? Now, you might over-resource it, you might under-resource it, but it's a way of getting smarter. Because the next time, let's say you over-resource something. Next time, you don't have to spend as much. Or under-resourced it. Next time, you're not going to go in the hole as much. So you're going to get smarter every single time. Success metrics, numbers. We want to be objective about what is success and what does it look like. It might be, I got this many leads, as long as you've defined what a lead is. What is the thing, that the number that you can measure, that is not going to be a, I liked it. It's got to be a number. And then ongoing metrics. After this, when the whole thing is done, what are you going to measure on an ongoing basis to know that you're successful? So you sit down and you document these things. And that is going to give you the first piece of this. And it doesn't have to take long. As I'm going to show you in a moment, this entire process doesn't need to take long, but by doing it and being intentional before you start, you're going to get a better result. So let's look at the Falcon 9, Elon Musk's rocket, and what did they do for a pre-action review? So their desired outcome was successfully deliver the payload to the ISS and safely land the first stage of the rocket. So that was what they wanted to do. Now, what obstacles did they have? Now, obviously, I don't know any inside information here, but they clearly had obstacles of certain kinds of technical failures, unfavorable weather conditions while they couldn't launch there. So what could they do, right? They could look for a different launch window. There's thousands of things that they could think about when they think about those potential obstacles. And they might not think about one of those obstacles, a certain kind of failure. But once they do, and they learn about it, they're going to add it to the next time. And the resources that they have engineering teams, they have tracking data, they have test simulations, they've got all kinds of resources to bring to bear into this project of the launch. So obviously a grossly complicated thing, so it makes our marketing campaigns and whatever we're going to be doing with this much more simple in comparison. But when they're doing this, it's not that because it's so complicated that it needs it. It illustrates that even a complicated thing would go through this. And for a simplified thing, it's that much more powerful in my mind, because we're actually bringing to bear this best practice on our everyday things that we're otherwise floating through and not getting better at. So there's success metrics. Payload successfully delivered, first stage landed safely. Ongoing metrics. After this, real-time telemetry data, system status, feedback from the engineering team, so they're using it to get better. And so I actually have a review worksheet for you, and you can fill this in. It'll take you a few minutes. It is downloadable. It's downloadable below this video. All the CEO Workbench resources have these kinds of things where you can just fill them out. You can copy them for yourself and make sure that you're doing the pre-action review. It's so much easier, by the way, to have this worksheet, to do this and just fill it in rather than reminding yourself, oh, well, I got to do this, and you're trying to shove it into some other documentation. Use the worksheets. They're there for you. So the next stage, the during action process. So we've got this little sandwich here, right? We've got the pre, and then the during, and then the post. So we're in the during the action process. There are three things that you want to do. Number one is figure out your observation points. Those are, what are the things that you're watching to make sure that the objective is being hit? So some of them are subjective, some of them are objective, but you've got an objective of the entire thing, and you're tracking certain KPIs. So what are those observation points? In other words, what do you need to be paying attention to and when? The second is communication, making sure that communication between the team members, between your vendors, whatever you've outsourced, that is flowing well, that everyone understands what the other person needs to know, and that the handoffs are clear. And then third, measurement and logging. You've got ongoing metrics, you're logging data. I actually, in my book, The Business Unlock, I go into this in a lot of detail about logs and data. You can get a copy of that on Amazon or go to my website, rajja.com, if you want a copy of that book. So these are the things that you're making sure that you're processing during the project. And guess what? You're going to screw up. We all screw up. And that's okay. You're going to get better next time. You're potentially not going to have all the observation points. You're going to forget to be watching something. Your tracking might have like slightly wrong numbers in it. That's okay. You'll get better next time. The fact that you're being intentional means that even when you screw up once and you're getting better the next time, you've made a quantum leap. in how well you are doing. So for the Falcon 9, they used rocket velocity, trajectory, system integrity. They had tons of data logs, and they were all recorded during the mission because they know, what if something goes wrong? Well, we don't want it to go wrong next time. What if something goes right unexpectedly? They get unexpectedly good values. Well, we should maybe double down on that. Is there a way we can push this thing further because the tolerances were actually greater than we thought? So again, with this really complicated thing, you know that they're doing this. So when we take that and apply it to our relatively simple businesses, we can get really, really big gains. Now the after action review. So after you've done something, this is what happens. We get this at the bottom of our sandwich. So we set clear expectations and objectives and at the beginning. And now we're going to sandwich that. So how do we reflect and improve? How do we improve what we just did for the next time? And if this is a one-time project, it doesn't matter. You still do this because you still want to know, how do I get better when this kind of pattern comes back? Because business is a lot about pattern recognition. Because I've been in business for 30 plus years, I see things that somebody who's only been in business for 5 or 10 years might not see. It's the pattern recognition. And when you capture it using this process, you're going to get better even faster. So now you're going to look at what? You're going to look at outcome versus goal. So you, at the beginning, had this kind of goal. You thought this is what's going to happen, but this was the actual outcome. They won't always line up. In fact, very often at the beginning of this process, they're not going to line up at all. So why didn't they line up? All right. What is that discrepancy there? And what could have made that line up? Success is what went well. So there's a couple reasons for measuring this. One is, well, if something went well, should we repeat that more? And the second is for your team to celebrate what went well. Because when something goes really well, we should expect that they would want some recognition for it. We should celebrate that. And also, it kind of is the other half of when something didn't go well, they're going to feel, oh, crap, things didn't go well. So they need to feel like they can celebrate the wins. Areas for improvement, what could have gone better? So it's a good question. Like, is there something that could have gone a lot better and we can do better next time? And this is where you really put a lot of thought into avoiding downside on the next time. And even again, if this is a one-time project, you will recognize these patterns later. So it's great to ask this question. And then a review of the metrics. Not only what the numbers are, but did I collect the right numbers? Very important. So Falcon 9, let's go back to our example. What many systems works as intended. They gathered a lot of data. There was a failure of a strut, which was a hardware issue and a quality control issue. Okay, so they had a failure, but now they know what it is. And they've gathered enough data of the right kind. They were watching the right metrics. So their outcome, more rigorous testing and inspection process with respect to certain parts. They can look down their supply chain. They can look at the assembly. They can figure out how exactly that's going to work. And then there were discrepancies in performance compared to expected metrics. So the launch did not perform as expected. Now, does that mean the launch is a failure? I would say no. And in fact, I would encourage you to adopt the there is no failure, there is only learnings mentality with this, because that's how you're actually going to get better. Calling something a failure is not helpful. It doesn't help your emotional state. It doesn't help your learning state. What does help is saying, what could have been done differently, and what will I do differently next time? So again, form for you. After action review, where you can just sit and fill it all in. It is downloadable below this video. So that is the process. It's a simple 3-step process, but it's how you get better. It is little things repeated constantly. I know you might not like to see that. You might not like to hear that the way to do this is to buckle down and have a process. It kind of feels like it's constraining. But if you want to get 37x better, this is how you do it. The process that you just learned can be installed in any business, but I can do even better. What if you could grow your business using science? In other words, turning it from unpredictable, I don't know what's going on, to making sure it's running on rails and actually scaling using science. I got a video on that, and it's right here.